Helen, welcome back to the studio of Billy's podcast. We just did an episode about prostitution and sex trafficking, and now we're going to go into the world of pornography and sex trafficking. We know that there's a connection there somewhere, but can you tell us a bit about where does it intersect? What are the connections? How do these industries overlap?
Yeah, absolutely. So about 5 years ago, Extra we are an anti-sex trafficking organisation, but we really began to address some of these intersections. And so probably I'd say the first intersection we see is that pornography is a big fuel for demand.
Yeah.
And we made this documentary about men who buy sex, who are fueling the demand for sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Every single man we interviewed described how their story began with childhood exposure to porn and a long-standing porn addiction.
Yeah.
And the nature of porn addiction that we know of is that it's kind of like a drug, and over time you, to get the same dopamine hit, have to look for different types of pornography or something that's more edgy or more extreme, or things that would have been unthinkable to the porn consumer originally. Sometimes years into their addiction, they find themselves watching. And so many of the men in this documentary we made just described that path to then going to strip clubs, going to massage parlors, requesting sex acts, to ordering what they believed later to be trafficked women.
Yeah.
I used to work in Cambodia, and I always remember this survivor telling me how she'd been trafficked from this Cambodian village, age 11, into the big city. And she said that men would bring pornography on their phones and tablets to show her and get her to reenact exactly what they saw in the porn. Yeah. And so we know trafficking is a supply and demand issue, and so it's so important. If we want to go after demand, we have to address pornography, and it's marketing prostitution, it's advertising prostitution. A lot of sex buyers who you find in Thailand and Amsterdam and Cambodia, they didn't just wake up that day and decide, I'm going to go and buy a child for sex. There was a long-standing addiction where this fantasy built in their mind where they wanted to find a young Asian teen and act out that fantasy after watching. And obviously not every porn consumer becomes a sex buyer, but we're always looking upstream, like how do we prevent trafficking? And so we quickly realized that porn is the marketing force behind trafficking.
Yeah, I remember I was in Cambodia in I think 2018. I was there with another anti-trafficking organization. We were there to cycle from Cambodia to Vietnam to fund a new housing. I think in Vietnam. It was a really great trip. But I remember going to this crisis center to meet some of the survivors there. I'd been in 2018, at least been involved in anti-trafficking work for at least 5 years, I think. But I still wasn't ready for what I was about to see or who I was about to meet. We came into this place, and one of the leaders there, she was like, "Welcome. This is where the girls are greeted. This is the lounge where they normally come in and watch cartoons." And she said cartoons, and I thought, I mean, it's a long time since I watched cartoons. I must have been a small kid when I watched that last time. When we got up to the 5th floor, we came up to a room, I think about 15 girls in the age 8 to 13 years old. And that's when I realized these are not women, these are girls. And I'll never forget their faces. I will never forget what they said. They were so thankful that we were there to get funds. But I mean, they were shouting and saying "Hakun, Hakun, Hakun." I think that means thank you. Yeah. I'll never forget those voices and those faces, and I can't believe that pornography can lead to that demand, and it's really poisonous for the soul, I believe.
Well, that
Yeah.
it's so unthinkable. Like, how could a grown man purchase this young innocent cartoon watching young girl. And I think it is the nature of pornography that it desensitizes and you see the girl not as a human being anymore, but as an object to consume for your pleasure. And pornography is a major force behind dehumanizing girls that enables them to then purchase them for sex as a sex slave experience.
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned that there are 5 intersections between porn and trafficking. So it fuels demand. What is the second one? Can you tell us?
I'd say the second one is trafficking happens even in the mainstream pornography industry. So we made this trilogy documentary called Beyond Fantasy.
Yeah.
And we interviewed a lot of porn producers and directors as a result, as well as performers who got into porn. And since then, we've worked with a lot of women who've come out of the porn industry, and some were in porn underage. And so, just to be clear, anyone who's in pornography underage, that's child pornography, or known as CSAM, child sexual abuse material. A lot of those sites are on the dark web. But as we discovered, which I'll share in a little bit, even the major porn sites don't verify the age and consent. So there may be all kinds of non-consensual, and there is all kinds of non-consensual porn online. But even in the brick and mortar studios, if the international definition of sex trafficking is that anyone induced by fraud, force, or coercion is being trafficked, one survivor I've worked really closely with for many years, she was trafficked in prostitution from age 11 to 14, and then 14 to 17 in hardcore porn. Yeah. And she said that being trafficked on the porn set was even more traumatizing because there were so many people in the room, so many people behind the cameras, the violence and the aggression and the gang rape scenarios that she was forced to do on camera. There's just an additional dynamics that take place. Not everyone in porn is trafficked by that definition, but you're witnessing real prostitution on camera. It's not acting. Real sex acts are taking place that would be illegal in other contexts, in America at least. But as soon as you put a camera in the room, it classifies it as pornography with all kinds of other legal protections. One survivor I worked with, she got into porn age 18, but she was struggling with a lot of mental health issues. She was on drugs. Yeah. And so having come out of that many years later, she just says, when I look at those videos, I just see myself being raped again and again. I wasn't in a situation where I was truly consenting. And so if we think about the whole issue of consent, money does coerce consent. Yeah. But also, if you're not sober, if you're not in your right mind, true consent is mutual, enthusiastic, full agency. And so, there is that aspect of women being exploited in porn. There's an organization we've worked with in Japan who told me they currently have about 800 cases of women who showed up thinking it was a modeling modeling shoot, and it was actually a porn shoot, and they were told, if you leave, you're going to have to pay for all the producers and everyone who showed up on set today. So they were threatened with that debt and threatened with all kinds of things. Then there was the Pornhub partner channel called Girls Do Porn, and the owner of that has been charged by the FBI for sex trafficking on 15 accounts, and 22 of the women on that channel are suing Girls Do Porn, and they again showed up thinking it was a porn, showed up thinking it was a modeling shoot, and were induced with drugs and alcohol and all kinds of coercive elements and threats if they left the set. And so that was a whole quote unquote mainstream porn site. Yeah,
wow. I mean, what can we say to that? It's really disturbing to hear about some of the most seen and visited websites in the world are streaming rape so we've got, it fuels demand. it comes out on mainstream pornography websites. What more intersections are there between pornography and trafficking?
Yeah, well, just like women are coerced and exploited sometimes in porn films, what we've seen really explode in the last few years is these big porn tube sites that kind of operate like YouTube. A lot of them are homemade amateur type videos that are uploaded by anyone. So anyone can upload a video to a site like Pornhub. And what we discovered 5 years ago was that you only needed an email address to create a video and upload it. So there was no checks about the age of the person uploading it or in the videos, and no checks around the consent. And it was a very, very disturbing thing to discover. We'd basically realized that in the mainstream news, there were all these different cases, like the case of a 15-year-old missing girl in Florida. There were 58 videos of her found on Pornhub, and she'd been trafficked. And the fact that the trafficker was able to upload all these videos of her being abused. And then the Sunday Times in the UK did an investigation, found girls or children as young as 3 years old on a site like Pornhub. Yeah. And so when combined with our team's own discovery, and my colleague at the time, Lila Mickleway, was so outraged about this. She wrote this op-ed called "It's Time to Shut Down Pornhub," and we decided to put together a petition that went really viral, had over 2 million signatures, led to forming this campaign called Trafficking Hub that became a global movement to hold Pornhub accountable, because at the time there were about 13 million videos on this site. And we were like, how many of these are actual videos of underage or trafficking victims or rape victims? The BBC released a report around that time of a girl called Rose Kalemba who, at age 14, a video of her gang rape at knife point had been uploaded, and she spent 6 months, sometimes up to 3 times a day, she told me, begging Pornhub to take down this video, and was completely ignored. She's telling them, I'm 14 in this video, I'm being raped. And it wasn't until she created a fake email address pretending to be a lawyer that Pornhub responded. They took down the video within 48 hours. But at that time, anyone could download any video and re-upload it. And so we've had survivors talk to us about how every morning they would obsessively go on all these different porn tube sites to check, has someone re-uploaded the video of my abuse? Another survivor said it was the immortalization of my trauma. So imagine trying to heal from a situation of a rape or being trafficked, and you can't heal or move on because videos of it exist online and are being re-uploaded and consumed by people around the world. And then there's these big companies like Pornhub making millions of dollars off your own exploitation. Like Pornhub becomes a pimp. Pornhub becomes a crime scene. And so we aggressively campaigned, and many other organizations joined us in this campaign, Trafficking Hub, to hold Pornhub accountable, to change their policies. And we had a list of many demands that by the end of the year, we can say that many of those demands were taken seriously. And the New York Times reached out. They wanted to do an investigation. They spoke to many of the survivors that we'd been working with. And after that article came out, it's called "The Children of Pornhub." It was on the front page. All the credit card companies cut ties with Pornhub. So Visa and MasterCard, Discover. And they were forced to delete 10 million videos, which is around 91% of their entire content, because they didn't know how many unverified videos were on their website. And so since then, there's been hundreds of survivors who are now suing Pornhub for illegal videos being on their site. And the campaign has only continued to grow and continue. And Lila is relentless in keeping the pressure on, holding them accountable. But it's very hard to even think about or talk about, because a lot of people have no idea that the women in these videos may actually be a trafficking victim or may not be consenting. It might not be acting, but real abuse that they might be consuming.
Yeah. I mean, in 2020, when this campaign was ongoing, we could read it on the news in Norway quite a lot, and it really went viral and was a big eye opener for so many people here. At the same time, now in 2025, when we go on to the news, we read about these girls who have slept with 100 or 1,000 men, and suddenly pornography is all right again, and we can read so much about pornography in the media, but what you're telling us here is a totally other picture that is sort of like Norway has forgotten a bit.
Yeah, well, just even to that point, I think it's really important to talk about OnlyFans as well. And there's been a lot of cases of non-consensual and abusive content on OnlyFans. OnlyFans operates like a giant pimp of a website that takes about 20% of what anyone earns. It operates as a pyramid scheme that incentivizes other people to join it, and then you make a percentage of what they earn. It's the top tiny percent of people making money. The average is like $150 a month that someone would even make on this website, so not very much. And it's so devastating to me because for so many girls, once that content is out there, the internet is forever. And even if they want to take down their images, maybe 5 years later they want to be a teacher or they're starting a business, and it's like this website actually owns them because it is so difficult to fully get those pictures off the internet. And so many young girls, 16, 17, are opening OnlyFans accounts on their 18th birthday, and this predatory website that someone like Andrew Tate exploited and built his whole pyramid scheme, coercing women to make content for him on OnlyFans. And then we've had lots of girls share with us how they get messages from men DMing them, offering them money to do certain things. So they might open an account, think, well, I'll just do these types of pictures. But if on a daily basis you're getting requests to do more for more money, then the pressure immediately is to cross all your boundaries, and then you end up in a situation like those two young girls, Lily Phillips being the most famous. I think they're both British, and this OnlyFans challenge of sleeping with 100 men a day and that being documented, and then 1,000 men. I mean, the boundaries are just being pushed and pushed. Who are these men flying across the world to line up in a line of 1,000 men to essentially exploit this woman? I mean, the exploitation is happening from all angles, and it, to me, is just developing a culture of prostitution where girls are seeing their value in being commodified and objectified on the internet. It's so the opposite of women's empowerment and true liberation and truly valuing women. And so, we're definitely really concerned with what we're seeing with the rise of OnlyFans, and think it needs to be definitely called out.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Let's get back into the intersection between porn and trafficking. So I guess we are on the third or fourth one now. I'm forgetting. Is it grooms? No, it grooms children, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I'd say the fourth one is that we did an Instagram poll a few years ago asking people to share how porn had hurt them.
Yeah.
And so many came back with stories that included pornography being used to groom them with child abuse by adults, showing them pornography, getting them to reenact what they saw. And when we look at studies and statistics across the board, many times in child abuse situations, pornography is used to normalize and groom sexual abuse. And it puts girls especially at a much higher risk of sexual assault if they've been exposed to pornography as a child, because that normalized porn to them. And then, just for the sake of time, the fifth way that porn and trafficking intersect, we see the porn industry as a predator that is intentionally exposing children to porn. Many kids are not even looking for porn, and porn finds them. Yeah. And through pop-ups, through the internet, through an innocent Google search, and they are immediately through Google and SEOs on a website like Pornhub that until recently didn't even have a click if you're I am over 18 button. So any child can easily, and this is still the case for most sites. And you and I just pulled up earlier that the top two sites, most visited sites in Norway, were two of the biggest porn tube sites, and that had more visits than
Yeah.
YouTube and Google and Reddit and Facebook, even here in Norway. So if there's no protections for children entering
Yeah.
sites like this, technically every child is 2 clicks away from seeing some of the most violent, misogynistic, racist, incest-themed porn. Some of the top categories for
Yeah.
porn in Norway are incest-themed, a stepbrother, stepmom, stepsister.
Yeah.
And for kids growing up in families, that is normalizing incest to children, essentially. So we saw this tweet that Pornhub released a few years ago that had a picture of Baby Yoda with Pornhub reflection in Baby Yoda's eyes, and the tag was 10 minutes after my parents leave the house.
Wow.
And we were like, so Pornhub's putting their cards on the table, very clearly showing that they're fully aware that children are watching their site. And I was like, how old is Baby Yoda meant to be? I mean, literally Baby Yoda in the title.
Yeah.
I mean, is it meant to be, or is he meant to be 2 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old? And so we've started campaigning this campaign called Protect Children, Not Porn.
Yeah.
We did another big petition and calling on states in America and nations to implement robust age verification that actually protect children from pornography. And the UK passed it. It goes into effect this year. We've had 19 states in America now pass it. We're wanting to see Norway adopt and embrace age verification.
Definitely.
And for people who ask, like, what does that even look like? It basically means that third-party encrypted companies and apps, porn sites are legally required to use this technology for any individual accessing a porn site to have their age verified, not their identity, but their age. And they can do that through a number of ways, including even just holding your hand up to a camera. The technology exists to verify that you're over 18 through just the development of your bone structure. Or you can put a government ID in or verify through your face. There's so many different ways. And we just believe that the priority has to be protecting kids from porn and applying the rules and laws in the physical world to the digital world. So if you have to show ID to buy a porn magazine, then that should be the case online. And I was in a meeting in Hollywood, kind of undercover, a couple of years ago with the porn industry, who were discussing how do we push back about all these anti-trafficking organizations that are trying to legislate against us. And it was the week after Louisiana had introduced age verification.
Right.
Louisiana was the first state to do that. And the whole mood in the room was anger. They were like, we are losing the war against porn. Oh, sorry, we're losing the war is what someone spoke up and said. And they were strategizing how to overturn and push back against age verification. And that was really disturbing to me to see the response of the porn industry wasn't to acknowledge, we should be protecting kids from porn. It was, how dare we be regulated against and restricted, and these big anti-trafficking organizations going after our struggling little industry. And I was like, actually, you're the multi-billion-dollar companies, and we're a little non-profit. We had 8 people on our team throughout the Trafficking Hub campaign. And they don't like that people are holding them accountable and exposing the money that is incentivizing them, because they don't want to put the money behind implementing age verification. It will come at a cost to them. But this is really important. And so we're hoping that Norway will take the lead in Scandinavia and even as a major European country in introducing age verification for children.
So good. And that's one of the important reasons why you are here in Norway. So this Wednesday, the 12th of February, we'll be going into the Norwegian Parliament. We have got all the important politicians in the room. We have Meta and Google and some of the big tech companies in the room. And we'll be discussing age verification on porn sites in Norway. Can we do this on a national scale? Is that we know it's possible, but can we do it within the year? Hopefully, it will go through and that Norway can be one of the first countries in Europe. And I'm so glad to hear that Britain and the UK has got through already. That's amazing. So the Trafficking Hub campaign, let's bring it back to that. In 2020, Visa and MasterCard, they they took away the option to pay on the porn sites, or was it just one porn site maybe? But how did it develop? Was that your vision? Was there any other anti-trafficking organizations working against the porn industry, or was it Exodus Cry alone?
Yeah, well, we like I said, we started this petition, but we really wanted it to be something that it wasn't just one organization talking about, but multiple organizations were getting involved. And so I think we had over 300 organizations sign on in support, and it became a movement to hold Pornhub accountable, and people were sharing it all over the world. I remember, I think there were signatures from like over 190 countries, and thousands of news articles were getting written. It was partly the timing of my colleague's article coming out and then this BBC report coming out the day after, and so there was a lot of coverage around that time. Plus, Pornhub had already been in the news a lot because they were offering free subscriptions to anyone staying at home because of COVID.
Right.
And and even at the time, they were like this porn site that was fully embraced by pop culture at the time. They had pop-up shops in Times Square and billboards in Times Square. They'd partnered with New York Fashion Week. They had celebrity endorsements. Saturday Night Live, this big show in America, had a commercial skit on Pornhub.
Right.
And so they'd really effectively marketed themselves as a like mainstream ethical type of porn site, when nothing could be further from the truth. So the campaign continues on, and I think there really does need to be even more serious consequences. Yes, the credit cards cut ties.
Yeah.
I think that if criminal acts took place, then there needs to be, if they try and say, well, we're not responsible for the content or the videos uploaded to our site. If you own a house and trafficking is happening on your watch, in your house, and you are benefiting from it financially, then you are operating as a pimp. So the Canadian Parliament, because Pornhub is based in Montreal, did an open investigation. It was available to watch online. And for the first time, the CEOs of Pornhub were interviewed, were grilled, were pressed on this issue. And so like all their social media accounts from Instagram and that have been removed. Companies like Roku that were showing that were partnering with Pornhub have cancelled them, and so not that we're endorsing cancel culture, but there's a time and a place where criminal companies should be cancelled, and that's what we saw.
Definitely. Now, the first age verification law came into effect in 2022. Is that right?
Well, actually, in the UK in 2022, but multiple other countries were also investigating and looking at it.
Yeah.
And then Louisiana was the first state in January 2023.
Do you know any numbers? How did it affect the viewers or the trafficking or the traffic to the sites? Did it go down or?
Well, Pornhub reported that in Louisiana, after 3 months, there was an 80% decline in viewership of registered Pornhub users, at least. And so even though they did implement age verification immediately with Louisiana, I think after they reported that, they became really nervous that they would stand to lose so many views and money if every other state implemented this. So they began protesting and blocking themselves in sites in states.
Yeah.
And so if you visited Pornhub in one of the other states that implemented age verification or introduced age verification, a video would come up saying, your First Amendment rights are under attack, and write to your legislators, trying to incite anger and cause people to push back. So then Pornhub started suing different states for implementing age verification, like Texas. And that case actually just got heard by the Supreme Court a few weeks ago in DC. And our team went out there, and many organizations wrote amicus briefs to make the case for why age verification should be upheld. So this war is still unfolding.
Yeah.
And I think, it's clearly porn sites, instead of just like implementing age verification straight away, they've been protesting and pushing back at every turn, because the truth is that they don't want to, and they say, well, we advocate for other types of age verification that we think would be more effective, like filters. The Supreme Court discussed all the ways that filters are not effective enough, and we need we think filters are great, but it needs to be from every angle. Device-based apps, filters, yes, but not every parent is able to fully monitor that. And so we want all children protected from porn, even those who don't have parents that are monitoring that.
So good. So we want to bring our listeners into a tip or a resource that they can learn more. In every episode of Belyst, I wonder, do you have anything that you could give the listeners that will be helpful to learn more, or download on their phone or buy? Do you have any resources from Exodus Cry that will be great?
Yeah. So we made a documentary that's just 30 minutes long called Raised on Porn. That's all about the impact of pornography on the brain of children. And we have an accompanying book as well that's really like all the resources about pornography and the brain, how it's impacting relationships and society, and children especially, is in that book. So Raised on Porn, you can get that and watch the film, access both from our website. And just to say, I think that it's so important to be able to talk about this, and we want to be able to present this issue in a shame-free way. I see it as the equivalent of drug dealers going into playgrounds, injecting kids with heroin, and then these kids are struggling with an addiction of something that they were exposed to that they weren't even asking for, looking for, and maybe even years later they are silently struggling with porn addiction. That's women as well as men, girls as well as young boys. And like I said, this industry is predatory. They have a money-making incentive to keep someone addictive and to get someone addicted, even as a child. And so understanding the impact of pornography on the brain is so helpful for being able to untangle yourself and not just see it as, especially if you're a Christian, a believer, not just seeing it as a sin issue, but trying to understand it as a drug that is literally affecting your mind and body, and understanding how it impacts relationships, understanding the nature of exploitation in the industry. And so, our documentary just gets into a little bit of that, but the book goes a lot more in depth. And so if this is something that either you have been struggling with, or anyone in your family, or if you're a parent, I just think this is an issue that is relevant to everybody right now. And the average age of a kid being given a smartphone is like 10 years old. More than 50% of people are accessing porn on smartphones in Norway. And so I just think this is something that especially the church needs to understand and be fully educated on, and be the best resource for those who are struggling with this.
Thank you so much for coming to Norway, Helen, being a part of this podcast. We really appreciate the work of Exodus Cry and the way you are helping people globally. And we're looking forward to this Parliament meeting this week. And hopefully Norway can be the first Nordic country to implement age verification law on porn sites. Tusen takk for at du lyttet til Belyst. Jeg håper dette var lærerikt. Jeg håper at du fortsetter å følge med og abonnere på Belyst-podcasten, en podcast om menneskehandel. Takk for i dag, og tusen takk til Helen Taylor som var gjest med oss fra Exodus Cry. Følg oss på Facebook og på Instagram. Følg også Exodus Cry på alle sosiale medier, og lær mer om denne tematikken. Takk for i dag.